Welcome to the Meet Me podcast, a podcast all about our multifaceted human nature and constant journey through self-discovery, with personal stories and insights around trauma, motherhood, relationships, spirituality, and individuality. I'm your host, Michelle Malik. Thanks for listening. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Meet Me podcast, a podcast all about our multifaceted human nature. I'm your host, Michelle Malik, and through this podcast, I hope to encourage others to transmute their experiences and their trauma into growth, connection, power, and purpose through open and vulnerable conversations. And today's episode is going to be all about religion, which right off the bat, I know is a pretty touchy topic. So let me just start by saying I have so many people in my life that I love and that I respect who hold different religious beliefs than I do. And I am by no means here to change anyone's minds about their religious beliefs or indoctrinate anybody into my own beliefs. Being that religion, like all things, is up for interpretation, I wanted to share, just like all my episodes so far, my own personal perspective, having gone through 2 different organized religions, an agnostic, bordering atheist phase, into the deep spiritual beliefs that I hold today. And in addition to those experiences, I will touch on just kind of general factual information that's tied to some of these religions. And I hope that, if nothing else, I can just shed some light on what led me to walk away from these religions and open up conversation around some of the more restrictive or contradictory beliefs and practices, in case there's anyone else out there who might be struggling or feeling isolated within their own faith or religious path. I've found that although I don't agree with everything that organized religions have to offer, it can be such a beautiful tool for others to find spiritual connection and community. And for that, I fully appreciate it and again value the people in my life who hold their religion so highly. In that way, it is extremely beautiful, and we're all just looking for a way to make sense of all of these unknowns in the human experience. But there are just some areas that never made full sense to me, and the more I've learned about the history of some of these religions, I've seen not only throughout history, but also in personal relationships, people who have utilized their religious faith as a tool to justify horrible actions. There are just so many ways to interpret it. But what can be really difficult within these primary religions is that each one claims that what they have to offer is true, that it is the right way and the right path to heaven, or the right way that you should live your life by. But again, it can be really hard to discern when each individual religion is claiming the same thing and basically dictating that any other beliefs are not the truth. And so what I've appreciated in my spirituality is just allowing for the flexibility to grow closer to, again, that connection of trying to understand some of the unknown aspects, trying to find comfort in our humanity, while also not discriminating against any other person or belief. I was raised in a traditional Catholic household. I was baptized as a baby. I regularly attended church with my family and was in Bible studies for most of my young childhood. And as a young child, I can't say that I ever fully connected with Catholicism. It was just something that I did, and I didn't really have any knowledge of a different choice, and it was just part of our routine. I didn't really resonate with a lot of the masses that I went to. Oftentimes I would struggle to keep my eyes open. Just being that Catholicism is one of the older religions and has a very traditional format, it just couldn't always fully hold my attention. But I did genuinely find some enjoyment in my Bible studies. I met quite a few friends during that time, and they always had different activities or projects to help take lessons out of the Bible and make it more digestible for us children. But I think I speak for a lot of people who grew up in religious households because it didn't necessarily always have to make sense. I was just told that this is something that I need to believe, and I didn't really have any outside resources or experience to question that. And so I want to say I was probably in middle school when I first started questioning aspects of my faith. There were some contradictions in the things that I was learning and in some of the hard rules that Catholicism had in place. I could never fully grasp the idea that this God, who is all powerful, all knowing, and all loving, would allow such horrible things and tragedies to happen, not only in the Bible, but obviously in real life. And I felt like this description of God didn't quite resonate with how things were playing out. But I think one of the other big reasons why I started to question my faith or started down that path is that once I hit puberty, which all of us do, I had a natural curiosity for sex and pleasure, and I started to feel wrong. I started to live in constant fear that I would go to hell just for having certain thoughts or having certain urges in this regard. And because my mom passed away when I was so young, as I was going through these developmental stages, I didn't really have anybody that I felt comfortable enough with to talk about this. Not to mention growing up, I was also raised to not fully understand things like the LGBTQ communities. I am glad that I was never around hatred towards these communities, but there was a lot of misunderstandings or non-acceptance or just wanting separation from those things. And as I started to grow older, living in a diverse place, I started to realize that those communities are just like us. They just have different attractions. And I think this really hit home for me when one of my best friends came out to me in high school. I had that thought, how could this person who I love and I admire, who I feel so close to, be condemned to an eternity in hell for simply finding attraction in a certain type of person? When all the while I'm seeing other people who claim to be shepherds of God, who utilize their faith again to excuse toxic and vile behaviors. But my mom was really the reason why my family practiced Catholicism. She came from a very Catholic family, just as most families in the Philippines tend to be. It's, fully part of the culture out there. A lot of the culture was built on the foundation of Catholicism. Anytime I visited, you can see regular masses being held in their malls, and my extended family practices it very regularly. And while I fully understand why these practices are held so highly and so deeply ingrained in the culture, Catholicism has been out there for the past few hundred years. But being Filipino and knowing the history, it has been a struggle at times to know that these practices were indoctrinated onto the native people of the Philippines during the Spanish Inquisition. Europeans literally came to our land and conquered and forced the people to fall into Catholicism. And that is a common theme for a lot of religions and how they start. There's been a repetitive pattern in history of religion being used as a means for controlling populations. But my dad was never firm in a religious practice. So once my mom passed away, we stopped going to Mass, and there was a while, just due to losing my mom, going through all these bodily changes, I found myself so deep in confusion and guilt. I was unsure what my faith was, trying to have my own personal relationship with God, even though we weren't going to church, I wasn't in Bible studies anymore. But I still just didn't really understand what his actual power was and why this was all happening. When my dad first remarried about a year later, it was to a proud Christian woman. And so we started attending a Christian church because of her, which I was very hesitant at first, just being the fact that I grew up Catholic due to my mom, and this woman was introducing us to a completely new practice. I didn't want to just take on somebody's beliefs, but I remember when I first walked into this Christian church, I felt a whole different energy than what I've ever felt in Catholic Mass. There was a big stage, it had all these lights. There was a whole production. The music and the songs were fun, upbeat, and inspiring. And as a teenager, this was all so appealing to me. Even the pastor seemed like a cool, all-around guy. He had stories that felt relatable and talked to experiences that resonated with me. They also allowed people of all backgrounds, including people of LGBTQ communities and others. And so at the time, being so lost in what my beliefs were, I remember having a moment in church where I really felt God was reaching back out to me. He was basically saying, let's try this again, but in a way that resonates more fully. So after a few more times of attending this Christian church, I decided to just dive fully in. I chose to get rebaptized as a Christian, got super involved in their youth group, went on multiple trips, attended their events. I had so many great friends, and even started to invite some of my close school friends to join and get exposed as well. And for a little while, I felt like things were really going on the right path. But there were still contradictions that would pop up every now and again. I noticed that people would pick and choose where their beliefs lied. Even things like gay marriage. Although everyone was accepted into the church, it didn't necessarily seem that everyone was accepting of the right to be with somebody of the same sex. Other things like premarital sex. Being in high school, I think this was a pretty hot topic of conversation, but I knew quite a few people who would use the excuse that as long as they were intending to get married, premarital sex wasn't a sin. Other things like tattoos or even astrology and zodiac signs, there's still some gray area in those things, along with drinking alcohol. And as I started to notice more and more people just having these different beliefs and having different standards for or interpretations for the same message, again, I started to question things. But overall, I did feel at peace during that time. But it also felt like a bit of a distraction for me because, again, I was still going through the grieving process of my mother, adapting to this new family that was living in my home, and just trying to make it through my high school experience. And I remember coming home one day from a mission trip that I was gone for about a week, and it was so powerful. I felt so inspired, and I came back home to some really horrible things that I don't want to dive into, but I just instantly felt betrayed in that way, in that sense. Like everything was falling apart, even though I tried and I tried and I tried to cling on to this religious belief, allow this God to bless my life or give me guidance. It just didn't matter. And because I was going through such a difficult time, that was really the last straw for me. I started to spiral, and my pessimism towards life led me to start believing that there just was no God. But that phase didn't last very long because always to my core, I have believed that there is some sort of greater power. I just feel like human existence in and of itself is way too complex and specific. I started to explore other avenues, but I realized that organized religion just wasn't going to be for me. And to be honest, up until just a couple years ago, even the word God made me uncomfortable because I held so much trauma from my time being in the church, being taught about this God that just didn't, again, resonate with what I was seeing happen in front of my eyes. I've come to really recognize that God is just a way to feel deeply connected to the thing that holds all of us in balance and that allows things to keep moving. Well, in my experience, religion stated that a specific set of beliefs was the only truth. Spirituality has allowed all of those beliefs to be true in their own way. So long as you let go of some of the man-made structure to something that's so personal and at a soul level as faith. And though I do plan to share more of my actual spiritual awakening process, which is constantly ongoing, more things just started to resonate as I dived deeper down this path and trying to understand this human experience. But I guess in like a physical, scientific way, I've started to just view humans on a molecular level to be connected. everything is made of matter, just atoms bouncing off of each other at different frequencies. And so although organized religion itself did not prove to resonate with me highly enough, I still strongly feel that my experience through these religions was so foundational to my spiritual beliefs and practices now. But I think where a lot of people struggle and where I struggled are, again, in these man-made, human-made rules and regulations and interpretations that allow others to view themselves as more worthy or to guilt others for feeling human natural urges or as a way to, again, control less fortunate communities. And so I truly do believe that faith is something so powerful and beautiful, and it's such a personal connection to whatever that power is that's out there. These religions are really just there to share connection to a higher source, to give comfort in finding a place after we leave this physical embodiment. But there are always going to be things that will still remain unexplained or difficult to understand because we're simply human. I think that all religions are based on those similar foundations, but anything that's used as a tool for separation or control can just be dangerous under the wrong authority, which we continue to see in history repeating itself over and over. While it is easier said than done, I hope that if you're listening and you're feeling these contradictions in your own faith or feeling like things don't fully make sense to you, it's okay to ask questions and try to get satisfaction from an answer. But the thing is that those answers may not come from this one particular structure that you've been brought up on. And it's within your human right to explore those other avenues. From one religion that believes in their version of God and in their spiritual practices, to another religion that believes in their version, or to something else completely. I think religion is really just there to fill you with hope, purpose, and connection. And so if it does provide all of those things, let it. But at the end of the day, no one truly knows everything. And so I have found a lot of peace in allowing my connection be personal and rejecting the things that don't work for me. I just wish that people didn't take their liberties in interpreting these beliefs to harm the world or to harm others, because in my mind, there is no belief structure that is worth going to war with other humans that are all made of that same matter. So if you're on your own journey, rediscovering your beliefs outside of religion, just know that you're not alone and keep going, because I'm sure that you'll find more than just where your religious beliefs lie in this process. You'll likely be closer to finding yourself. And so again, I am not here to tell anyone that their religion is wrong. I hope that if anything, you hear me validating the feelings that those beliefs give you. I just don't believe in all of the rules that are enforced that are made to control or divide us. And if that in and of itself means that I'm on my way to hell, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be the first time I've been there. That's really all I wanted to share today. I do hope that it resonated, and I realize, again, this is another really hefty topic that I can only touch on so much in these bite-sized episodes, but I know that I felt really lost in trying to find my way and just hope to be a guiding light to anyone else who needs it. As always, you can find me on Instagram at _Michelle Malik. Please don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss future episodes. I'm so appreciative of your time listening. Can't wait to share with you again soon. Until then, bye.